Carlos Sainz won! Ferrari won! It is not a dream, it really happened! Verstappen retired, Alonso penalized, Sargent without car watching the race from the box. We have so many things to talk about in this PostGP video. Is the World Championship still open? Let's start with this mega analysis, as always starting from the summary of the weekend. This time the summary doesn't start from Formula 1, but it starts from Formula 2 and Formula 3. Because after Jeddah, I left you with a question. How would have Oliver Burman performed in Formula 2? Because in my mind, that would have been the only interesting thing about the weekend. Well, maybe I sent a curse on Burman. He didn't exactly have a great pace, it must be said. But between red flags, safety cars, everything that could have gone wrong, it went wrong. So, not a good weekend for Burman. Anyway, being myself Italian, I want to congratulate with Kimi Antonelli because he made it to the front row in Formula 2 qualifying, and also another young man from the Ferrari Driver Academy is shining brightly. Dino Beganovic from Sweden won the Formula 3 race ahead of Fornaroli and Mini. Good job, Italy. Well, let's move on to Formula 1. Already from Friday, you can tell that this is going to be a very interesting weekend. Why? Because Pirelli decided to bring the three softest compound, which are C3, C4 and C5. That's a very aggressive choice for Australia, which is a peculiar street track, but with many fast corners that stress the tires a lot. So all the drivers, as expected, are suffering from graining in FP1. And Pirelli confirms that this is going to be a danger in race as well. For those of you who don't know, the graining is a surface wear phenomenon of the tire. Basically, when it slides away on the asphalt, the rubber flakes off the surface, creating some kind of orange peel that reduces the grip. If the graining is clear, you can recover from it. Otherwise, you won't. And the problem of graining is that it's very hard to prevent, especially in cold conditions where you have no grip and the tire slips, or if you have understeer, which means that the front tires are slipping and then you have graining. This concept is critical to understand what happened in Australia. Back to Friday, RedBull suffers understeer, which means graining, and so free practice goes poorly. Ferrari, on the other hand, has a very stable and precise front end. Leclerc flies, and Sainz seems to have no issues after the appendicitis surgery. However, the scene on Friday is taken by Williams because Albon crashes badly. His car cannot be repaired on track because he broke the chassis. Okay, but why can't they fix it? Because Williams doesn't have a spare part for the chassis. Wow, we'll talk about this later to understand why precisely they didn't have it. But what happened is that Sargent was forced to give his car to Albon. So Albon will race and Sargent won't. Qualifying time, the two Ferraris are the favorite for the pole position. But guess what? In Q3, Verstappen finds the perfect balance and makes the pole position. Sainz P2, Norris P3, Perez P4, Leclerc P5. But Perez got penalized for impeding, and so Leclerc P4. In the race, there is good start from Verstappen, who takes the lead, and then everybody say, okay, it's over. Until after just a couple laps, Verstappen complains about an issue. His right rear brake is smoking. Sainz realizes it. He's going faster. He overtakes Verstappen and takes the lead. And in the following lap, Verstappen stops with a huge brake failure. Verstappen retired after 2 years. Everybody must take advantage of it. Carlos Sainz does it by building his victory thanks to the first stint on mediums. Yes, because while all the others were struggling with graining, Sainz had no signs of degradation. And he was able to build a good advantage, to change tires later than everyone else, and be able to take advantage of fresh hard tires without stressing them too much. Leclerc, thanks to an undercut, overtakes Norris, and in the end we have the two Ferraris, the two McLarens, Perez P5 with more than a half a minute from the lead, until on the penultimate lap we have a big crash from Russell while he was trying to overtake Alonso. After the race, it emerged that Fernando Alonso broke much earlier than expected, and then he accelerated back. That was a dangerous behavior, so he was penalized by 20 seconds on the final results. So, Nando P8, Stroll P6, Tsunoda P7, and then the two Haas closed the point zone. Now, let's talk about the top 3 and the flop 3 of the racing weekend, and then in the Naska tech we will talk about the Williams, and after that, of Ferrari. The first top driver of the weekend, Carlos Sainz. What do you wanna say to Carlos Sainz? The best compliment you can tell to Carlos Sainz is that today he was the Verstappen of the race. And if Red Bull doesn't offer him a seat tomorrow, they are crazy. When it mattered, Sainz was always there. About Ferrari, we will talk in a few minutes. However, about Carlos Sainz, almost perfect in qualifying. Maybe he could improve a couple tenths, but in the race, guys, after overtaking Max, he was a hammer. Guys, let's just remember that this guy doesn't have a seat for 2025. Ferrari did not renew the contract to him, and he just recovered from appendicitis. Just like he said on the team radio after the victory, life is incredible.
Life is a roller coaster, eh? And life is incredible. Sometimes.
The second top of the weekend, McLaren. Guys, what a fantastic McLaren. On this track, the first place remains away, but Norris played it great with Leclerc. Good qualifying for both drivers. Piastri was hooked to the top 3 for half of the race. I mean, if a big upgrade comes to Imola, are we going to see the McLaren in front? I can't wait for it. The third top of the weekend, Yuki Tsunoda. Guys, Tsunoda started the season like a rocket. He is destroying the poor Ricciardo, who really deserves his second flop of the weekend in a row. And I feel sorry for Daniel, who almost seemed lost in qualifying. I really can't explain those gaps. It really looks like a season 2 of Ricciardo and McLaren. Instead, Tsunoda makes it to Q3, beats the Aston Martins, and in the race always stays close to Stroll, finishing P7 with important points for Racing Bulls. Let's go with the flop 3, and the first flop of the weekend, Red Bull. I would have never expected to say Red Bull. Well, actually there is some sense to it, because in 2022 Melbourne was the worst track for Red Bulls. And in 2023 Verstappen won. Yes, but the Mercedes were not that far. Red Bull had no big advantage. In short, Red Bull in Melbourne is not that competitive. Every year they have understeer, which triggers graining. And this year, with the softer Pirellis, the problem has increased. Perez struggled all the time, all the race, all the weekend. And Verstappen, on the other hand, had a super max qualifying, okay. But I doubt that he could have beaten Sainz in the race. Yes. Even without the failure, it is possible that Sainz would have made it. Or at least, Max would have not dominated. And this already is great news. Second flop of the weekend, Sauber. And guys, this is crazy. Do you know which was the only team that did not suffer graining, except for Ferrari? McLaren? No, Sauber. Bottas had a very good pace in the middle of the pack. Better than the Haas and almost in Tsunoda's zone. That means they could have scored points. And why didn't they make it? Because they keep breaking the wheel nuts during the pit stops. Unacceptable. Third flop of the weekend, Mercedes. So, on the penalty of Alonso on Russell, we can argue for a century. The stewards admitted that Russell crashed because he lost the car on the dirty air over Alonso, but they condemned Fernando because he broke and then re-accelerated and then re-broke before approaching the corner. It seemed that he was struggling with the battery, but Alonso admitted that he was trying to defend himself and he anticipated the braking too much, realizing he was short, and then he re-accelerated back. Now, why is this considered dangerous driving? Because on a race, on track, you want to brake always in the same spot, especially in Formula 1. So the driver behind you can follow you very close because he's expecting you to brake always in the same spot. And if you intentionally brake earlier than expected, you can cause an incident. And that is bad because it's unnecessary. So Alonso was penalized for dangerous driving. In the technical terms, we can say erratic. However, this doesn't save Mercedes from being a flop this weekend. Hamilton unrecognizable, out of Q2 by just 36 thousandths of a second from Russell. Then he retired in the race for broken engine. Russell crashed while he was 7th, but Russell was slow, light years away from the podium, never into the race. This Mercedes is a disaster, even worse than 2022. Now, let's go into the Naska tag and let's talk about the Williams. What happened? How it's possible that a Formula 1 team withdraw a driver because they didn't have a spare chassis? The answer to this question comes before the Melbourne Grand Prix, and it's contained in an excellent piece by Scott Mitchell-Malm published on The Race last week. In essence, Williams came to testing with its heart to its throat. Do you say that in English? I mean, we say that in Italian, it means that they were late. The car was ready at the last moment. Why? Because until the arrival of the new team principal James Vowles from Mercedes, Williams had lagged behind in the factory management. Just think that the car production process was run through Excel, with files with more than 20,000 rows. I mean, it's not that Excel is bad, okay? But for such big projects, you need the management software. How was it possible? Years of missed investments, maybe also some old-fashioned management. So here comes James Vowles and he buys a new management software. Too bad the employees got confused with a new car to build and a new software to learn. And so, in the factory, the workers were struggling in finding the parts. And that delayed the production of the Williams. Also add to that they pushed on the timetable to find performance in the wind tunnel. And here we are with 2 Williams arriving ready at the last moment in Bahrain. Well, inside all this chaos, they decided to postpone the production of the 3rd chassis because they preferred to produce the upgrades for the car. So Williams bet on the first 3-4 races not to crash, which was a big bet considering the 2 of them were Jeddah and Melbourne. Super fast track with super close walls. So Albon crashed in the FP1, he broke the chassis and so he was not able to race. So what did Williams do? They took a Sargent car, gave it to Albon and told Sargent, "You're not going to race." Wow, is it so bad? Is it scandalous? Well, I would say no. In 2023, Sargent scored 1 point compared to the 27 points of Albon. Since Williams is not a charity, they want to choose the driver which is the best at scoring points, because those points are worth millions that Williams really need. So it's bad for Sargent, I know, but if he doesn't want it to happen, he just have to go faster. Well, in all of this, I would say that there is one scandalous thing, which is that Sargent pays quite a lot to be a Williams driver. It's rumored to be $30 million a year to be there. And so the perspective changes when you look at that. Telling the paying driver not to race because the paid driver is faster and needs to race, if I wasn't Sargent, I would have asked for some million back as a compensation. But in all of this, the biggest scandal of all, and I will always say that, is that it's not only that a Formula 1 team is unacceptable that they don't have spare chassis, but to me it's unacceptable that in Formula 1 there are drivers that are paying to race. Time for the too hot to handle, the hot topic of the weekend. And being the first win of Ferrari this year, I will talk about Ferrari. Exactly like Binotto would have said, it's all about understanding. And so we need to understand how the Ferrari won this Grand Prix. Well, actually, they dominated the Grand Prix. Let's answer some questions. How much is this victory worth? It's worth a lot, even if Verstappen retired. The reason is simple. Red Bull in Melbourne suffered graining. Then maybe Supermax would have won anyway, but I doubt, because the Ferrari on the race was better. And so, why was the SF24 going so fast in Australia? Because they found the perfect balance for this track. In fact, they found the perfect balance in the race. And already to say in 2024 that Ferrari is faster in the race than qualifying, after the 2023 nightmare, is half a miracle. Well, in Melbourne, Ferrari had a very strong front end, a calmer rear end, and in short, the SF24 was the fastest car on track on Sunday. What's the weak point of Ferrari? Ferrari's weak point remains qualifying. It's usually said that 3 pieces of evidence make a proof, and 3 bad qualifyings make a proof. The thing is that Leclerc and Sainz are competitive on a single push lap until Q2, and then in Q3 they don't perform. It's still a mystery why it's happening. Maybe the car gets nervous when you want to find the last 0.3 of a second? When it has to exploit the maximum grip of the tire? Or maybe it's just 2-3 slower than the Red Bull, but the car is so easy to drive that they get to the limit in Q2 and then they mess up in Q3? I don't know. Why did Sainz go faster than Leclerc? Simple. Because he is good. He's not better, he's not worse, he's just good as Leclerc. Ferrari has 2 very fast drivers. In Melbourne, Sainz found the perfect setup, started ahead of Leclerc, and then he managed. Does Sainz deserve to be replaced by Hamilton? No, but it's not that Sainz is better than 2023 Sainz. He's still the same driver, he always was good. He did not deserve to be swapped before, he doesn't deserve now. His only fault in this non-renewal is that Lewis Hamilton was free. And when you have a legend like Lewis Hamilton, which is free, you just want to take it. Why did Leclerc struggle so much? Good question. On Friday, Leclerc was on rails. Then, on Saturday, with his engineer, he messed up. The setup didn't follow the evolution of the track well, the car became nervous, then Charles probably overdo it by changing something on a setup to catch the pole, and so, the most important thing in these situations is to bring home as many points as possible. So, he finished P2, and he made his job. And in fact, Leclerc is just 4 points behind Verstappen in the standings. What has changed inside Ferrari? This is the most interesting question. The Ferrari of 2 years ago maybe would have messed up when Verstappen retired. And this is a big step. Ferrari has grown in every detail. The strategies, the pit stop, the tire management. It's a team ready to seize opportunities. And this is the best news coming out of Melbourne for Ferrari's fans. Can we dream about the Red World title? No. Well, at least the driver world title. Because the constructor title, I bet on Ferrari. Let's go now with the Naska votes. Magnussen 7.5 points awarded. Hülkenberg 8 underrated. Zhu 5.5 blameless. Bottas 6.5 given out to Valtteri. Ricciardo 4.5 total crisis. Tsunoda 9 brilliant. Sargent on the bench. Albon 5.5 scoreless. Ocon 6.5 bloody tear off. Gasly 5.5 boundless from pit lane. Stroll 6 tidy. Alonso 7 combative. Piastri 7.5 ephemeral. Norris 8.5 concrete. Hamilton 5 dejected. Russell 6 capsize. Sainz 10 wonderful. Leclerc 7 bungling. Perez 6 hidden. Verstappen 9 no brakes for real. On to the next GP and beyond. Next up, Suzuka. Yes, we were used to see it at the end of the calendar, now they anticipate it to April. Race Sunday 8 at 7 AM Central European Time. Qualifying on Saturday 8 AM Central European Time. It will be a test for all the teams, because the first updates will arrive. People talk about few components for Ferrari and perhaps many for Red Bull. The favorite will be Verstappen, but watch out for the McLarens.